Master Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her position on the rocky outcropping, her movements so subtle they wouldn't register on even the most sensitive motion detectors. 3 kilometers away, through the scope of her custom-built rifle, she could see the Kythera pack that had been terrorizing the mining colony on Kepler 438c for the past 2 weeks. The weapon in her hands was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While most civilizations had moved beyond projectile weapons millennia ago, embracing energy-based systems and exotic matter manipulation, humanity had taken a different approach. The M2045 Extended Range Precision System represented the culmination of 8 centuries of firearms development, refined through countless conflicts and perfected by a species that had learned warfare in the crucible of their own violent history. The rifle fired a 15mm depleted uranium core surrounded by a smart metal jacket that could adjust its ballistic properties mid-flight. The bullet could penetrate nearly any known armor, and its guidance system allowed for course corrections up to 5 kilometers from the target. But the weapon's true innovation lay in its complete silence and thermal invisibility, making it impossible for even advanced alien sensors to detect the shooter's position. Maria had been hunting Kythera for 6 months now, ever since Admiral Chen had implemented what military historians would later call the sniper protocol. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. If the Empire wanted to hunt humans, humanity would teach them what it meant to become prey. Through her scope, Maria watched the lead Kythera as it stalked a group of miners who had taken shelter in a maintenance facility. The creature was magnificent in its lethality, standing nearly 3 meters tall with chitinous armor that shifted color to match its surroundings. Its elongated limbs moved with predatory grace and its head swiveled constantly, scanning for threats with sensory organs that could detect heartbeats from hundreds of meters away. The Kythera were apex predators, genetically engineered over thousands of years to be the perfect hunting machines. They possessed speed that could outpace most vehicles, strength capable of tearing through reinforced steel, and intelligence sufficient to use tools and adapt tactics mid-hunt. Most importantly, they had been bred to feel pleasure from the act of hunting sentient prey, making them both efficient killers and enthusiastic participants in the Empire's entertainment industry. What they hadn't been bred to deal with was an enemy that could kill them from distances they couldn't even comprehend. Maria's finger found the trigger as she calculated wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and the subtle gravitational variations caused by the planet's 3 moons. Her target was positioned near a ventilation shaft, probably planning to cut off the miners' air supply to force them into the open. It was a tactic the Kythera had used successfully on dozens of worlds. The bullet left the barrel at nearly 3 times the speed of sound, its passage creating no muzzle flash, no sonic boom, no trace that human technology could kill with such precision across such vast distances. The smart metal jacket adjusted the projectile's trajectory twice during its 3-second flight, compensating for atmospheric disturbances that would have thrown off even the most sophisticated energy weapons. The depleted uranium core struck the Kythera just behind its primary sensory cluster, penetrating the creature's natural armor and devastating its nervous system. The alien predator collapsed instantly, its body convulsing briefly before going still. Its packmates immediately began scanning for threats, their enhanced senses seeking any trace of their unseen enemy. They found nothing. Maria was already repositioning, moving through terrain she had studied for days before taking her shot. The Kythera possessed thermal vision, electromagnetic detection capabilities, and could track scent trails across vast distances, but they had been designed to hunt prey that fought with claws, primitive weapons, or basic energy rifles. They had no experience with an enemy that could strike from beyond their sensory range and disappear like smoke. The pack's alpha, a scarred veteran of hundreds of hunts across dozens of worlds, began issuing commands in the clicking, hissing language of its species. The creatures spread out in a classic search pattern, their optical camouflage making them nearly invisible against the rocky landscape. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered anything they couldn't eventually track down and kill. That confidence was about to become their weakness. Maria's second shot came from a position nearly 2 kilometers away from her first, striking another Kythera as it investigated what it thought was her previous location. The bullet punched through the creature's torso, the smart metal jacket expanding on impact to maximize internal damage. The alien hunter dropped without even seeing its killer. The remaining pack members were now visibly agitated, their predatory instincts warring with confusion, and something they had rarely experienced in their genetically engineered existence: fear. They had faced desperate prey before, creatures that fought back with whatever weapons they could find. But this was different. This was hunting being turned back on them by an invisible enemy that struck without warning and vanished without trace. On worlds across human space, similar scenes were playing out as Admiral Chen's strategy unfolded. The sniper protocol had been implemented by elite marksmen from every branch of Earth's military, men and women who had trained their entire lives for long-range precision shooting. They had been deployed to every world the Empire had designated as hunting preserves, armed with weapons specifically designed to exploit the one weakness the Kithara possessed. The creatures were predators, not prey. They had never learned to be hunted. Master Chief Petty Officer James Richardson crouched in the ruins of what had once been a shopping center on Proxima Centauri B, his rifle trained on a Kythera pack that had been stalking a group of refugee families. His weapon was a variant of Maria's, modified for urban combat with enhanced sound suppression and a shorter barrel for improved maneuverability. The pack below him consisted of 5 creatures, including what appeared to be a breeding pair that had been responsible for the deaths of over 300 colonists. Richardson had been tracking them for 8 days, learning their patterns, identifying their preferred hunting routes, understanding their behavioral quirks. The male of the pair was particularly sadistic, even by Kythera standards. It had developed a habit of capturing human children and using them as bait to draw adults into elaborate traps. The creature seemed to take special pleasure in forcing parents to choose between their own survival and their offspring's safety. Richardson's first shot ended that particular game permanently. The bullet struck the male, Kythera center mass, the depleted uranium core shattering its primary heart and sending fragments through its secondary organs. The creature's death was instantaneous, but its packmates didn't immediately realize what had happened. They began investigating their fallen leader, confusion evident in their agitated movements. Richardson's second shot eliminated the female before she could process her mate's death. His third and fourth shots dropped 2 more pack members as they finally began to scatter, their formation breaking apart as panic overrode predatory instinct. The final Kythera managed to reach cover behind a collapsed building, its optical camouflage making it nearly invisible. But Richardson had been hunting dangerous game since he was 12 years old in the forests of Alaska, and he understood something the Empire's pet monsters didn't. Patience was the hunter's greatest weapon. He waited. For 6 hours, he remained motionless in his hide, monitoring the area through his scope while the surviving Kythera tried to locate its invisible enemy. The creature was intelligent enough to understand that it was being hunted, but it lacked the experience to deal with a predator that operated beyond its sensory range. As the local sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ruined cityscape, the Kythera finally made its mistake. Desperation and hunger overcame caution, and it began to move toward where it had detected the scent of human survivors hidden in a nearby subway station. Richardson's final shot came as the creature emerged from cover, believing itself safely concealed by darkness and camouflage. The bullet found its target with mechanical precision, and another of the Empire's perfect predators became just another casualty in humanity's growing war of extinction. Across human space, the death toll was mounting. But for the first time since the Empire had unleashed its biological weapons, it wasn't human lives being harvested for alien entertainment. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had never produced a peaceful species, and why their particular brand of warfare had been refined through millennia of conflict against the most dangerous predator of all, themselves. The stars burned cold above New Geneva as Admiral Chen Nakamura stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest orbital defense station. 3 years had passed since the Zephyrian Empire had made contact, and what humanity had hoped would be a peaceful introduction to galactic civilization had become something far more sinister. The holographic display before him showed the latest intelligence reports from the outer colonies. 17 human settlements had gone dark in the past month, their final transmissions cut short by something the Empire called biological compliance. Enforcement, the sanitized language, couldn't hide the truth that Chen and every other military commander in the Sol Defense Network understood with crystal clarity. The Empire was hunting humans for "Sport Admiral," came the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, her usually steady tone betraying a tremor of barely controlled rage. "We've received another transmission from the Zephyrian High Command. They're demanding we cease all defensive preparations and submit to what they call recreational harvesting protocols." Chen turned from the viewport, his weathered face hardening into an expression that had earned him the nickname Stone Face during the Martian rebellions. At 62, he had seen humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction, but nothing had prepared him for this particular brand of cosmic cruelty. The Zephyrian Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy, their influence spreading across thousands of star systems through a combination of advanced technology and ruthless subjugation. When their sleek, crystalline ships had first appeared at the edge of the Sol system, humanity's leaders had prepared for either trade negotiations or conventional warfare. They had not expected to become the galaxy's newest entertainment. The Empire's method was as elegant as it was horrifying. Rather than engage in costly military campaigns against primitive species, they simply released engineered predators onto populated worlds. These creatures, known as Kythera, were the product of millennia of selective breeding and genetic manipulation. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with razor-sharp claws, optical camouflage, and intelligence that bordered on sapience, they were the perfect biological weapons. But the Kythera weren't meant to simply exterminate. They were designed to hunt specific prey over extended periods, providing entertainment for Zephyrian nobles who watched the carnage unfold through quantum-linked observation drones. The longer a hunt lasted, the more prestigious it became. Some particularly skilled Kythera had been known to stalk individual targets for months, turning entire worlds into elaborate hunting preserves. "Show me the Kepler 442b footage again," Chen commanded, his voice carrying the weight of command that came from 3 decades of military service. The hologram shifted, displaying the final hours of humanity's agricultural colony on Kepler 442b. The settlement had been home to nearly 50,000 people, families who had traveled across the void to build new lives among the amber wheat fields under an alien sun. The colonists had possessed standard defensive weapons, designed primarily for wildlife management and the occasional pirate raid. They had been utterly unprepared for what came hunting them. The Kythera had been released in groups of 20, their pods falling from orbit like metallic seeds. The footage showed the creatures emerging from their containers with fluid grace, immediately disappearing into the tall grain with their optical camouflage engaged. What followed was a systematic campaign of terror that lasted 6 weeks. The aliens didn't simply kill. They studied their prey first, learning human behavioral patterns, identifying leaders, understanding the colonists' defensive capabilities and psychological weaknesses. They would strike at isolated farmhouses, leaving enough survivors to spread fear throughout the colony. They disabled communication arrays with surgical precision, cutting the settlement off from outside help while leaving internal communications intact, ensuring that stories of horror could spread from building to building. The psychological warfare was masterful. The Kythera would sometimes allow groups of humans to escape, only to hunt them through the grain fields like a twisted game of hide and seek. They demonstrated an understanding of human family bonds by targeting children in front of their parents, and showed tactical intelligence by destroying food stores and medical facilities to force the colonists into increasingly desperate situations. Lieutenant Morrison highlighted specific sections of the footage, her training as a xenobiology specialist making her one of the few humans who could analyze Kythera hunting patterns. "Notice how they adapt their techniques based on human responses, Admiral." When the colonists tried to fortify the central community center, the Kythera began using hit-and-run tactics. When the humans attempted to evacuate to the caves in the northern mountains, the creatures somehow anticipated the route and set up ambush points. Chen watched as the final transmission from Kepler 442b played out. The colony's administrator, a middle-aged woman named Elena Vasquez, stood in what remained of the settlement's command center. Behind her, fires burned throughout the complex, and the occasional roar of a Kythera could be heard echoing through the smoke-filled air. "To anyone receiving this message," Vasquez had said, her voice remarkably steady despite the dire circumstances, "humanity needs to understand what we're facing. These things aren't just predators. They're intelligent, they're cruel, and they enjoy what they're doing to us. Don't let our deaths be meaningless. Find a way to fight back." The transmission had ended when something massive crashed through the command center's reinforced walls. The final image showed a glimpse of chitinous armor and glowing yellow eyes before the feed cut to static. Similar scenes had played out across 17 worlds. Each time, the Zephyrian Empire had broadcast the hunts to their home systems, where billions of citizens watched the slow extermination of human colonies with the same casual interest Earth's population might show for a sporting event. The Empire's demands were simple. Surrender all human worlds for conversion into hunting preserves, relocate the species to designated reservation planets, and accept their new role as the galaxy's premier game animals. In exchange, the Zephyrians promised to allow a breeding population to survive, ensuring a renewable source of entertainment for future generations. Most galactic powers had faced similar ultimatums when the Empire first encountered them. Some had fought conventional wars and been crushed by superior technology. Others had submitted immediately, their populations scattered across hunting worlds throughout Zephyrian space. A few species had managed to negotiate limited autonomy by offering tribute or specialized services. None had ever successfully resisted the Catherichan, turned away from the holographic display and walked to the tactical planning station, where his senior staff had gathered. The room fell silent as his presence commanded attention, every officer understanding that the decisions made in the next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of the galaxy's extinct species or carved out a different path entirely. "Gentlemen, ladies," Chen began, his voice carrying across the chamber with absolute authority. "The Empire believes they understand human nature. They think fear will break us, that we'll submit like every other species they've encountered. They're about to learn why that assumption is a fatal mistake. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and it would be fought with weapons the galaxy had never seen before." High Executor HFY stood before the massive viewscreen in the command center of the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Dominion, his crystalline features reflecting the data streams that cascaded across the display. For the first time in his 3-century career overseeing the Empire's entertainment divisions, the numbers didn't make sense. In the past 6 months, they had lost over 40% of their Cathara breeding stock. The creatures that had successfully hunted prey across thousands of worlds for millennia were dying at an unprecedented rate. More disturbing still, they were dying without ever seeing their killers. "Explain this to me again, Combat Analyst Vorth," HFY commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated severe displeasure among his species. Vorth, a lower-ranking Zephyrian whose specialized knowledge made him valuable, despite his humble origins, activated a tactical hologram showing the latest incident reports. "High Executor, the pattern is consistent across all human worlds. Our Cathara packs deploy normally, establish hunting territories, and begin their pursuit protocols. Then they simply die." The hologram showed heat signatures from the mining colony on Kepler 438c, where Master Sergeant Santos had eliminated an entire pack. Red dots representing Cathara biosignatures moved through the terrain in standard hunting formations, then began disappearing one by one. No energy discharges were detected, no explosive residue, no trace of conventional weapons fire. "The humans aren't using energy weapons," Vorth continued, highlighting the absence of the characteristic thermal blooms that accompanied plasma or particle beam attacks. "There are no electromagnetic signatures indicating defensive systems. Our surveillance drones detect no unusual technology deployments." HFY's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary organs focused on subsidiary data streams. The Empire had encountered defensive resistance before. Some species developed improved armor or enhanced weapons when faced with Cathara hunts. Others had tried hiding in underground bunkers or creating elaborate fortress systems. A few had even attempted to flee their worlds entirely. None had ever turned the hunt around on the hunters themselves. "Show me the Proxima Centauri incident," he demanded. The holographic display shifted to the urban ruins where Master Chief Richardson had eliminated his targets. 5 Cathara signatures moved through the destroyed cityscape, their hunting pattern textbook perfect. Then, over the course of 8 hours, each signature winked out with mechanical precision. The temporal spacing suggests a single attacker, Vorth analyzed, his voice betraying the confusion that was spreading throughout the Empire's military hierarchy. But that's impossible. No single organic entity could eliminate a full Cathara pack without being detected. Our analysis indicates the shots came from distances exceeding 4 kilometers. No known species in the galaxy possesses natural senses capable of accurate targeting at such ranges. HFY turned away from the display and walked to the chamber's central planning station, where representatives from the Empire's various military branches had gathered for an emergency strategic review. The Zephyrian military machine was vast and sophisticated, having conquered or subjugated over 10,000 species across their quarter of the galaxy. They had faced every conceivable form of resistance, from primitive nuclear weapons to exotic matter manipulation. They had never faced an enemy that used what appeared to be chemically propelled projectiles with precision guidance systems. General Kithara, HFY addressed the Empire's chief military strategist, a veteran of campaigns stretching back 5 centuries. Your assessment of human defensive capabilities. The general's form shifted color slightly, indicating deep consideration. Like all Zephyrians, her body was composed of living crystal that could alter its configuration based on environmental needs or emotional states. Right now, her crystalline structure displayed the deep purples and blues associated with analytical focus. The humans are using primitive kinetic weapons, but with technological sophistication that borders on the impossible, she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a campaign. Our weapons analysts have recovered projectile fragments from several kill sites. The bullets are composed of dense metallic cores surrounded by programmable matter sheaths that can alter ballistic characteristics during flight. She activated her own holographic display, showing a magnified view of one of the recovered bullet fragments. The twisted metal revealed microscopic circuitry and what appeared to be miniaturized guidance systems. The projectiles are launched silently, travel at hypersonic speeds, and can adjust course multiple times during flight. More concerning, they appear to be completely invisible to our detection systems until the moment of impact. Whatever propulsion method the humans are using produces no energy signature our sensors can identify. HFY absorbed this information while reviewing casualty reports from across the hunting zones. The losses weren't just numerical, they were qualitative. The Kithara being eliminated were often pack leaders, breeding males, and experienced hunters with decades of successful campaigns. The humans weren't just killing randomly, they were systematically targeting the most valuable members of each pack. "There's something else, High Executor," Forth interjected, calling up a new set of data. "We've been monitoring Zephyrian broadcast networks, and civilian interest in human hunting programs has dropped significantly. The viewing public is becoming uncomfortable with the reversal of the traditional dynamic." This was perhaps the most troubling development of all. The Empire's hunting programs served multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment. They reinforced the natural superiority of Zephyrian civilization, provided psychological comfort to citizens who could watch lesser species being dominated, and generated enormous revenue through betting pools and premium viewing packages. When the prey started winning, the entire foundation of the system began to crack. "Recommendations?" HFY asked his assembled staff. General Kithara's form shifted to the gold and silver patterns that indicated strategic planning. "We could deploy additional Kithara to overwhelm human defensive positions, or we could escalate to direct military intervention, using our fleet assets to conduct orbital bombardment of human colonies." "The economic cost would be substantial," interjected Treasury Coordinator Thexal, whose role required him to balance military effectiveness against profit margins. Kithara breeding programs represent centuries of genetic investment. Direct military action would eliminate the entertainment value entirely and reduce human worlds to worthless irradiated rocks. HFY considered the options while studying the tactical displays. The Empire's strength had always been its ability to subjugate species without destroying their economic potential. Conquered civilizations became sources of labor, raw materials, and entertainment. Simple extermination was wasteful and unprofitable. But the humans were proving to be a unique challenge. Their resistance wasn't based on superior technology or overwhelming numbers. Instead, they had taken the Empire's own tactics and refined them into something more efficient and terrifying than anything the Kithara had ever faced. The humans were turning predation into an art form. "Analysis Division Leader Morkseth," HFY called to a specialist whose expertise lay in studying the behavioral patterns of prey species. Explain human psychology to me. Morkseth's crystalline body flickered through several color patterns before settling on the deep reds associated with xenological research. Humans are unusual among galactic species, High Executor. Most civilizations develop along paths that emphasize cooperation, resource sharing, and conflict avoidance as they advance technologically. Humans have retained their predatory instincts despite achieving spaceflight capability. The specialist activated a cultural analysis display showing human historical data collected during the initial contact period. Their species evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across vast distances over extended time periods. They possessed natural abilities for pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, and tool usage that exceed most civilizations by several orders of magnitude. Images flashed across the display, showing human hunting practices from their pre-spaceflight era, hunters tracking animals across continents, Aboriginal peoples using primitive weapons to bring down creatures many times their size, military snipers eliminating targets from impossible distances during their numerous conflicts. More concerning, Morkseth continued, is their cultural relationship with warfare. Most species treat combat as a necessary evil, something to be avoided whenever possible. Humans have developed combat into a philosophy, a science, and in some cases, an art form. They study warfare with the same intensity other species apply to mathematics or stellar engineering. The implication hung in the chamber's crystalline air like a toxic cloud. The Empire had encountered predatory species before, but none that combined natural hunting instincts with technological sophistication and a cultural dedication to perfecting the art of killing. HFY finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape the Empire's approach to a single primitive species. Deploy the elite hunters. If the humans want to play predator and prey, we'll show them what 10,000 years of genetic engineering can. Captain Jack Morrison felt the familiar weight of his rifle as he settled into position on the mountainous terrain of Kepler 452b. The planet had been humanity's most successful agricultural colony before the Empire had designated it as a hunting preserve. Now it served as the testing ground for something the Zephyrians called their elite hunters. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had detected the incoming deployment pods. Unlike the standard Kythera drops, these capsules were heavily shielded and equipped with advanced stealth technology. The creatures they carried were different from anything humanity had faced before. Morrison adjusted his scope and studied the valley below, where thermal imaging revealed heat signatures unlike any normal Kythera. These new hunters were larger, their biosignatures indicating enhanced musculature and what appeared to be technological augmentations integrated directly into their biological systems. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be actively scanning for electromagnetic emissions, suggesting they had somehow learned to detect the guidance systems in human bullets. Control, this is Overwatch 6. Morrison spoke quietly into his communication system. I have visual confirmation on 3 elite hunters. They're definitely not standard Kythera, advising all units to maintain maximum concealment protocols. The response came from Colonel Sarah Chen, Admiral Chen's daughter and the commanding officer of humanity's expanded sniper operations. Copy that, Overwatch 6. Be advised, we've lost contact with sniper teams 2 and 7. Last transmissions indicated they were engaging elite hunter targets. Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In 8 months of operations, humanity hadn't lost a single sniper to Kythera attacks. The creatures had proven incapable of locating shooters who operated from beyond their sensory range. If the elite hunters had somehow overcome that advantage, the entire strategic foundation of human resistance was in jeopardy. Through his scope, Morrison watched as the largest of the 3 creatures began moving through the terrain with a methodical precision that was distinctly different from normal Kythera hunting patterns, where standard hunters relied on speed and stealth to overwhelm prey. These elite specimens moved like military units conducting a search and destroy operation. The lead hunter paused at a rocky outcropping and extended what appeared to be a sophisticated scanning device from a cavity in its chest. The device swept the surrounding area with a barely visible energy beam, and Morrison realized with growing alarm that it was conducting some kind of technological reconnaissance. His suspicions were confirmed when the creature suddenly pivoted in his direction, its enhanced sensory organs locking onto his position despite the 3-kilometer distance and his carefully constructed camouflaged hide. Morrison immediately began relocating, using terrain features and movement techniques refined through decades of long-range operations. But as he moved, he could see all 3 elite hunters adjusting their positions in response to his movement, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to track him in ways that should have been impossible. The largest hunter raised its arm, and Morrison caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. Integrated into the creature's forearm was what appeared to be a long-range energy weapon, its design clearly based on advanced Zephyrian military technology. The Empire hadn't just created better predators, they had created hybrid creatures that combined biological superiority with technological enhancement. Morrison dove for cover as a coherent energy beam scorched the rocks where he had been positioned moments before. The beam's intensity indicated destructive power far beyond anything standard Cathara possessed, and its accuracy demonstrated targeting capabilities that rivaled human precision systems. For the first time since the war began, a human sniper found himself being hunted by creatures that could fight back at his own range. On the other side of the planet, Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez crouched in the ruins of an abandoned research facility, her modified rifle tracking an elite hunter that had been stalking a group of civilian refugees. Unlike Morrison's long-range engagement, Rodriguez found herself in a close-quarters situation where the creature's enhanced physical capabilities posed an even more significant threat. The elite hunter she faced stood nearly 4 meters tall, its chitinous armor reinforced with what appeared to be energy-absorbing plating. Its movements demonstrated strength and speed that exceeded even standard Cathara capabilities, and its enhanced sensory array included technological components that glowed with an eerie blue light. Rodriguez had already taken 3 shots at the creature, each bullet finding its target but failing to penetrate the hybrid's enhanced armor. The depleted uranium cores that had proven so effective against standard Cathara simply weren't sufficient to overcome the technological improvements the Empire had grafted onto their elite specimens. The hunter turned toward her position, its enhanced senses having triangulated her location based on the trajectory analysis of her failed shots. Its arm-mounted weapon began charging with a characteristic whine that indicated imminent discharge, and Rodriguez realized she had perhaps seconds before her position was eliminated entirely. She switched to her secondary ammunition supply, explosive-tipped rounds designed for hardened targets. The bullets were larger, slower, and more detectable than her standard loads, but they carried shaped charges capable of penetrating armored vehicles. If conventional ammunition couldn't bring down these enhanced creatures, perhaps raw destructive power would succeed where precision had failed. Her shot struck the elite hunter center mass, the explosive charge detonating against its enhanced armor with enough force to shatter nearby concrete. The creature staggered but remained upright, its armor scorched but still functional. Worse, the explosion had revealed Rodriguez's position completely, leaving her exposed to retaliation. The hunter's return fire destroyed the wall section where she had been concealed, forcing her into the open where her only advantages were speed and tactical knowledge of the facility's layout. As she moved through the corridors, she could hear the creature pursuing her with mechanical determination, its enhanced capabilities allowing it to match her pace despite the obstacles she placed in its path. Back at the Sol Defense Network's command center, Admiral Chen received the first battlefield reports with growing concern. The elite hunters represented a fundamental shift in the conflict's dynamics, transforming what had been a one-sided campaign of human predation into something approaching conventional warfare. "Sir," Lieutenant Morrison reported, her voice tight with stress, "we're receiving casualty reports from multiple fronts. The elite hunters have adaptive countermeasures for our standard tactics. They can detect our guidance systems. They possess armor that defeats our standard ammunition, and they're equipped with long-range weapons that match our engagement distances." Chen studied the tactical displays that showed engagement zones across a dozen worlds. Red indicators marked positions where human snipers had been eliminated or forced to withdraw, while yellow warnings indicated areas where elite hunters had successfully tracked human positions despite concealment protocols. "Analysis?" Chen asked his staff. "The Empire has essentially created biological equivalents of our own soldiers. replied Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the xenobiologist who had been studying Kythera specimens since the war began. These elite hunters combine the natural predatory advantages of their species with technological enhancements that neutralize our tactical superiority. They're faster than standard Kythera, stronger, more intelligent, and equipped with military-grade weapon systems. The implications were clear to everyone in the command center. Humanity's sniper protocol had succeeded because it exploited the one weakness inherent in biological predators: their inability to engage threats beyond their natural sensory range. The elite hunters had eliminated that weakness through technological augmentation, creating hybrid entities that could fight humans on equal terms. Options? Chen demanded. Colonel Sarah Chen, his daughter, stepped forward with a grim expression. We have two choices, Admiral. We can withdraw our sniper teams and accept that the Empire has countered our tactics, or we can escalate our own capabilities to match theirs. Admiral Chen understood what his daughter was suggesting. Since the war began, humanity had maintained strict limitations on their weapons deployment, using only conventional projectile systems to avoid triggering galactic attention to their advanced technological capabilities. The Sol Defense Network possessed far more sophisticated weapons than the rifles their snipers carried, but revealing those capabilities would announce to the entire galaxy that humanity was more technologically advanced than they had pretended. Sir, his communications officer interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Command. They're requesting a formal negotiation session. Chen authorized the transmission, and High Executor Zexai's crystalline features appeared on the main view screen. The alien commander's expression carried what humans had learned to interpret as satisfaction. Admiral Chen, Zexai began, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of dominance. I trust you've encountered our latest hunters by now. As you can see, your primitive tactics are no longer effective. We offer you one. Captain Jack Morrison felt the familiar weight of his rifle as he settled into position on the mountainous terrain of Kepler 452b. The planet had been humanity's most successful agricultural colony before the Empire had designated it as a hunting preserve. Now it served as the testing ground for something the Zephyrians called their elite hunters. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had detected the incoming deployment pods. Unlike the standard Kythera drops, these capsules were heavily shielded and equipped with advanced stealth technology. The creatures they carried were different from anything humanity had faced before. Morrison adjusted his scope and studied the valley below, where thermal imaging revealed heat signatures unlike any normal Kythera. These new hunters were larger, their biosignatures indicating enhanced musculature and what appeared to be technological augmentations integrated directly into their biological systems. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be actively scanning for electromagnetic emissions, suggesting they had somehow learned to detect the guidance systems in human bullets. Control. This is Overwatch 6. Morrison spoke quietly into his communication system. I have visual confirmation on 3 elite hunters. They're definitely not standard Kythera, advising all units to maintain maximum concealment protocols. The response came from Colonel Sarah Chen, Admiral Chen's daughter, and the commanding officer of humanity's expanded sniper operations. Copy that, Overwatch 6. Be advised, we've lost contact with sniper teams 2 and 7. Last transmissions indicated they were engaging elite hunter targets. Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In 8 months of operations, humanity hadn't lost a single sniper to Kythera attacks. The creatures had proven incapable of locating shooters who operated from beyond their sensory range. If the elite hunters had somehow overcome that advantage, the entire strategic foundation of human resistance was in jeopardy. Through his scope, Morrison watched as the largest of the 3 creatures began moving through the terrain with a methodical precision that was distinctly different from normal Kythera hunting patterns. Where standard hunters relied on speed and stealth to overwhelm prey, these elite specimens moved like military units conducting a search and destroy operation. The lead hunter paused at a rocky outcropping and extended what appeared to be a sophisticated scanning device from a cavity in its chest. The device swept the surrounding area with a barely visible energy beam, and Morrison realized with growing alarm that it was conducting some kind of technological reconnaissance. His suspicions were confirmed when the creature suddenly pivoted in his direction, its enhanced sensory organs locking onto his position, despite the 3-kilometer distance and his carefully constructed, camouflaged hide. Morrison immediately began relocating, using terrain features and movement techniques refined through decades of long-range operations. But as he moved, he could see all three elite hunters adjusting their positions in response to his movement, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to track him in ways that should have been impossible. The largest hunter raised its arm, and Morrison caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. Integrated into the creature's forearm was what appeared to be a long-range energy weapon, its design clearly based on advanced Zephyrian military technology. The Empire hadn't just created better predators. They had created hybrid creatures that combined biological superiority with technological enhancement. Morrison dove for cover as a coherent energy beam scorched the rocks where he had been positioned moments before. The beam's intensity indicated destructive power far beyond anything standard Kythera possessed, and its accuracy demonstrated targeting capabilities that rivaled human precision systems. For the first time since the war began, a human sniper found himself being hunted by creatures that could fight back at his own range. On the other side of the planet, Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez crouched in the ruins of an abandoned research facility, her modified rifle tracking an elite hunter that had been stalking a group of civilian refugees. Unlike Morrison's long-range engagement, Rodriguez found herself in a close-quarter situation where the creature's enhanced physical capabilities posed an even more significant threat. The elite hunter she faced stood nearly 4 meters tall, its chitinous armor reinforced with what appeared to be energy-absorbing plating. Its movements demonstrated strength and speed that exceeded even standard Kythera capabilities, and its enhanced sensory array included technological components that glowed with an eerie blue light. Rodriguez had already taken 3 shots at the creature, each bullet finding its target but failing to penetrate the hybrid's enhanced armor. The depleted uranium cores that had proven so effective against standard Kythera simply weren't sufficient to overcome the technological improvements the Empire had grafted onto their elite specimens. The hunter turned toward her position, its enhanced senses having triangulated her location based on the trajectory analysis of her failed shots. Its arm-mounted weapon began charging with a characteristic whine that indicated imminent discharge, and Rodriguez realized she had perhaps seconds before her position was eliminated entirely. She switched to her secondary ammunition supply, explosive-tipped rounds designed for hardened targets. The bullets were larger, slower, and more detectable than her standard loads, but they carried shaped charges capable of penetrating armored vehicles. If conventional ammunition couldn't bring down these enhanced creatures, perhaps raw destructive power would succeed where precision had failed. Her shot struck the elite hunter's center mass, the explosive charge detonating against its enhanced armor with enough force to shatter nearby concrete. The creature staggered but remained upright, its armor scorched but still functional. Worse, the explosion had revealed Rodriguez's position completely, leaving her exposed to retaliation. The hunter's return fire destroyed the wall section where she had been concealed, forcing her into the open where her only advantages were speed and tactical knowledge of the facility's layout. As she moved through the corridors, she could hear the creature pursuing her with mechanical determination, its enhanced capabilities allowing it to match her pace despite the obstacles she placed in its path. Back at the Seoul Defense Network's command center, Admiral Chen received the first battlefield reports with growing concern. The elite hunters represented a fundamental shift in the conflict's dynamics, transforming what had been a one-sided campaign of human predation into something approaching conventional warfare. "Sir," Lieutenant Morrison reported, her voice tight with stress, "we're receiving casualty reports from multiple fronts. The elite hunters have adaptive countermeasures for our standard tactics. They can detect our guidance systems, they possess armor that defeats our standard ammunition, and they're equipped with long-range weapons that match our engagement distances." Chen studied the tactical displays that showed engagement zones across a dozen worlds. Red indicators marked positions where human snipers had been eliminated or forced to withdraw, while yellow warnings indicated areas where elite hunters had successfully tracked human positions, despite concealment protocols. "Analysis?" Chen asked his staff. "The Empire has essentially created biological equivalents of our own soldiers," replied Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the xenobiologist who had been studying Kythera specimens since the war began. "These elite hunters combine the natural predatory advantages of their species with technological enhancements that neutralize our tactical superiority. They're faster than standard Kithra, stronger, more intelligent, and equipped with military-grade weapons systems. The implications were clear to everyone in the command center. Humanity's sniper protocol had succeeded because it exploited the one weakness inherent in biological predators: their inability to engage threats beyond their natural sensory range. The elite hunters had eliminated that weakness through technological augmentation, creating hybrid entities that could fight humans on equal terms. Options? Chen demanded. Colonel Sarah Chen, his daughter, stepped forward with a grim expression. We have two choices, Admiral. We can withdraw our sniper teams and accept that the Empire has countered our tactics, or we can escalate our own capabilities to match theirs. Admiral Chen understood what his daughter was suggesting. Since the war began, humanity had maintained strict limitations on their weapons deployment, using only conventional projectile systems to avoid triggering galactic attention to their advanced technological capabilities. The Sol Defense Network possessed far more sophisticated weapons than the rifles their snipers carried, but revealing those capabilities would announce to the entire galaxy that humanity was more technologically advanced than they had pretended. Sir, his communications officer interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Command. They're requesting a formal negotiation session. Chen authorized the transmission, and High Executor Zexai's crystalline features appeared on the main view screen. The alien commander's expression carried what humans had learned to interpret as satisfaction. Admiral Chen, Zexai began, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of dominance. I trust you've encountered our latest hunters by now. As you can see, your primitive tactics are no longer effective. We offer you one. Sergeant First Class David Chen materialized from his adaptive camouflage system, like a phantom emerging from the landscape itself. The quantum thread suit that covered his body made him effectively invisible to every known detection method in the galaxy, while the enhanced weapon system, maglocked to his back, represented 3 centuries of human weapons development that had been carefully hidden from galactic observation. The elite hunter that had been terrorizing the mining colony on Wolf 3529C was unlike anything the standard Kithera could have imagined. Standing 5 meters tall and equipped with enough technological augmentation to qualify as a cyborg, it had eliminated 2 conventional sniper teams before David's unit had been deployed with authorization. To use humanity's true military capabilities, the weapon David carried was officially designated as the M2247 Adaptive Hunter System, but the soldiers who used them simply called them God-killers. The rifle incorporated exotic matter manipulation, temporal distortion targeting, and ammunition that existed in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Each bullet was essentially a miniature weapon of mass destruction, wrapped in a delivery system that could penetrate reality itself. Through his enhanced optical system, David watched the elite hunter as it methodically searched the mining complex for surviving humans. The creature moved with the confidence of a predator that had never faced anything capable of threatening it, its sensor array sweeping the area with technological sophistication that exceeded most military installations. David's targeting computer locked onto the elite hunter and began analyzing its defensive systems. The creature's armor incorporated energy absorption matrices, kinetic dispersion fields, and what appeared to be limited temporal shielding. Its weapons systems included plasma cannons, particle beam arrays, and some kind of exotic matter disruptor that could theoretically destroy matter at the subatomic level. It was impressive technology. Unfortunately for the elite hunter, humanity had been developing countermeasures for similar systems since their first encounters with the Zephyrian Empire. David's first shot didn't exist in normal spacetime. The bullet phased through multiple dimensions during its flight, bypassing the elite hunter's defensive systems entirely by striking from a direction that didn't technically exist. The exotic matter core destabilized the creature's enhanced armor at the molecular level, causing catastrophic failure of its integrated technological systems. The elite hunter collapsed as its augmented biology and technological enhancements tore each other apart in a cascade of systemic failures. Its death wasn't just physical. The dimensional phase ammunition had disrupted the quantum bonds that held its hybrid nature together, essentially erasing it from multiple layers of reality simultaneously. David immediately relocated to a position 3 kilometers away, his adaptive camouflage system ensuring that even if the Empire had been monitoring the engagement, they would have no way to trace the attack back to its source. The quantum thread technology that made his suit possible was based on principles that most galactic civilizations didn't even understand existed. Across human space, similar encounters were playing out as Admiral Chen's authorization unleashed capabilities that represented the true scope of human military development. The species that the Zephyrian Empire had dismissed as primitive was revealing technological advancement that surpassed their own in multiple categories. On Kepler 442b, where the elite hunters had been deployed in force, Master Chief Petty Officer Sarah Kim crouched inside a temporal displacement field that made her effectively untouchable by conventional weapons. Her position existed approximately 0.3 seconds in the future relative to normal space-time, allowing her to observe and target enemies who couldn't interact with her dimensional position. The elite hunter pack she faced had been enhanced beyond the standard specifications, their armor incorporating adaptive technologies that could theoretically counter any conventional attack. Their weapon systems included reality distortion fields and temporal manipulation devices that made them among the most dangerous entities the Empire had ever created. None of it mattered. Kim's weapon fired ammunition that incorporated collapsed matter derived from neutron star cores, each bullet possessing enough mass to create localized gravitational anomalies upon impact. When her shots struck the elite hunters, they didn't just penetrate armor or destroy tissue. They created miniature black holes that consumed the targets from within. The pack of 6 elite hunters was eliminated in 37 seconds, each death creating a small gravitational disturbance that briefly warped space-time in the immediate area. When the engagement concluded, there was nothing left of the Empire's most advanced biological weapons except 6 perfectly spherical depressions in the ground, where reality itself had been temporarily reorganized. In the Sol system, High Executor ZXHY watched the destruction of his elite hunters with growing disbelief. The technological signatures his sensors were detecting from human weapons made no logical sense. According to every analysis the Empire had conducted, humanity was a primitive species that had barely achieved interstellar flight capability. The weapons being deployed against his forces suggested technological development that exceeded Zephyrian capabilities in multiple categories. Analysis Division Leader Morkseth, ZXHY commanded, his crystalline form cycling through color patterns that indicated extreme agitation, explained to me how a primitive species is using technology that violates known physical laws. Morkseth's form had settled into the deep black coloration that indicated complete analytical confusion. High Executor, the humans appear to possess mastery of dimensional manipulation, exotic matter engineering, and temporal mechanics that shouldn't be possible given their apparent technological level. Either our initial assessment of their capabilities was catastrophically incorrect, or they've been deliberately concealing their true advancement level. The implication was staggering. The Zephyrian Empire's expansion had been based on careful assessment of target species' technological capabilities. They only engaged in hunting protocols with civilizations that posed no meaningful military threat. If humanity possessed advanced technology comparable to or exceeding Empire standards, the entire foundation of their relationship had been built on false assumptions. Combat Analysis Division, ZXHY ordered, provide a complete technological assessment of human weapons capabilities based on current engagement data. The holographic display that materialized showed a breakdown of observed human technologies that read like a nightmare scenario for Empire military planners. Dimensional phase manipulation, exotic matter ammunition, temporal displacement systems, reality distortion fields, and gravitational weapons that bordered on planet-killing capabilities. Each individual system represented technological advancement that the Empire had spent millennia trying to achieve. Humanity appeared to have mastered all of them and integrated them into individual soldier weapon systems. Recommendation? ZXHY asked his military staff. General Kythara's form had shifted to the deep red coloration associated with extreme tactical concern. High Executor, we must assume that humanity has been deliberately concealing their true technological capabilities since first contact. If these weapons represent their standard military equipment, our conventional forces would be inadequate for direct confrontation. The admission hung in the chamber like a toxic presence. The Zephyrian Empire had built its dominance on technological superiority over lesser species. The possibility that a seemingly primitive civilization possessed technology that exceeded their own challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying their entire galactic position. "What are our options?" Zexhai demanded. "Immediate withdrawal from all human territories," General Kithara replied without hesitation. "Reclassification of humanity as a Class Alpha threat, requiring maximum diplomatic consideration. And most importantly, hope that they're willing to negotiate rather than demonstrate the full scope of their capabilities." Zexhai considered the recommendations while studying casualty reports that showed the complete elimination of elite hunter forces across multiple worlds. The creatures that had represented the pinnacle of Empire biological engineering had been destroyed so thoroughly that in many cases, no trace of their existence remained. Treasury Coordinator Thexel, he called to his economic advisor. "What are the financial implications of reclassifying humanity from prey species to peer competitor?" Thexel's crystalline structure flickered through calculation patterns before settling on the golden hue associated with economic analysis. "Catastrophic, High Executor. The entire entertainment industry built around human hunting would collapse immediately. More significantly, we would need to completely restructure our expansion policies if other supposedly primitive species possess similar hidden capabilities." The true scope of the crisis was becoming clear. The Empire's business model depended on the ability to identify and exploit technologically inferior species. If their assessment capabilities were fundamentally flawed, the entire foundation of their galactic dominance was questionable. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the battlefield reports with grim satisfaction. The deployment of humanity's advanced weapons had achieved its intended effect, demonstrating. The negotiation chamber aboard the neutral station Galactic Concordia floated in the void between Zephyrian and human space, its crystalline walls designed to accommodate the environmental needs of hundreds of different species. Admiral Chen sat across from High Executor Zexhai at a table that had witnessed the resolution of conflicts spanning millennia, but nothing quite like the situation that had brought them together. 6 months had passed since humanity had revealed the true scope of their military capabilities, and the galaxy had not stopped reacting to the implications. 3 major galactic powers had requested immediate diplomatic contact with Earth. 2 others had withdrawn from territories adjacent to human space, and the Galactic Commerce Guild had begun treating human trade requests with the deference usually reserved for civilization-ending threats. The Zephyrian Empire, meanwhile, had discovered that their entertainment industry had collapsed entirely. When prey species started winning hunting programs, the psychological foundation of Zephyrian cultural superiority cracked like an overstressed crystal matrix. "Admiral Chen," Zexhai began, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of resigned defeat, "my government is prepared to offer full reparations for damages inflicted on human colonies. Immediate withdrawal from all territories claimed by your species, and formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign galactic power." Chen studied the alien commander across the table, noting the subtle color shifts in his crystalline structure that indicated stress and uncertainty. The human delegation had spent weeks preparing for these negotiations, analyzing every aspect of Zephyrian psychology and culture to understand how to navigate the complex political situation their victory had created. "Your offer is a good starting point," Chen replied carefully, "but it doesn't address the fundamental issue that brought us to this conflict. Your empire has built its entire economic and social structure around the subjugation of species you consider inferior. What guarantee do we have that you won't simply repeat this pattern with other civilizations once this immediate crisis has passed?" The question struck at the heart of a problem that extended far beyond the human-Zephyrian conflict. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy indicated that hundreds of species had been subjected to the Empire's hunting programs over the millennia. Some had been completely exterminated. Others had been reduced to breeding populations maintained on reservation worlds, and a few had managed to negotiate limited autonomy through the payment of tribute. None had ever successfully resisted the Empire's biological weapons until humanity had demonstrated that the Kithara were not invincible. "We are prepared to discuss modifications to our expansion policies," Zexhai admitted, his form shifting to colors that indicated significant internal conflict. "However, you must understand that the systems you ask us to abandon have been fundamental to our civilization for thousands of years. Such changes cannot be implemented overnight. Chen leaned forward slightly, his expression hardening. High Executor, let me be very clear about something. Humanity doesn't negotiate with slavers, and we don't accept gradualist approaches to ending genocide. Your hunting programs stop immediately across all territories involving all species. Your breeding populations are released and provided with transportation to worlds of their choosing. Your Cathera stocks are either destroyed or converted to non-predatory roles. The silence that followed was profound enough to be measured in geological time. Zexai's crystalline structure cycled through color patterns that Chen's xenopsychology briefings had taught him to interpret as shock, outrage, and finally, desperate calculation. Such demands would require the complete restructuring of our civilization, Zexai finally responded. The economic disruption alone would affect billions of citizens across thousands of worlds. The social consequences could lead to the collapse of our governmental structure. Then you should have considered those consequences before you decided to use sentient beings as entertainment. Chen replied without a trace of sympathy. The choice is simple. Adapt your civilization to coexist peacefully with other species, or discover what happens when humanity stops limiting itself to defensive actions. The threat was delivered with the quiet certainty of someone who had spent a lifetime making life and death decisions. Chen had commanded fleets during the Martian rebellions, overseen the defense of Earth during the asteroid wars, and survived political purges that had claimed half of his generation of military officers. He had no intention of allowing an alien empire to continue its predatory practices, simply because change would be inconvenient. Zexai's form shifted to the deep blue coloration, associated with strategic reassessment. What exactly are you proposing? Chen activated a holographic display that showed a comprehensive restructuring plan his staff had developed over the past 6 months. Complete cessation of all hunting programs within 1 year. Release and repatriation of all prey species currently held in captivity. Conversion of your biological weapons programs to ecological restoration projects. And establishment of a monitoring system to ensure compliance with these agreements. The plan represented a fundamental transformation of Zephyrian society, but it also offered pathways for the Empire to maintain its technological and economic advantages without relying on the exploitation of other species. Human economists had identified multiple alternative revenue streams based on legitimate trade, technological licensing, and infrastructure development. The monitoring system would be administered jointly by humanity and the Galactic Concordia, Chen continued, with enforcement mechanisms that include economic sanctions, territorial restrictions, and, if necessary, direct military intervention. Zexai studied the holographic data with growing amazement. The humans hadn't just demanded an end to the Empire's predatory practices. They had developed a complete blueprint for transitioning Zephyrian civilization to a post-exploitation economy. The level of analysis required to create such a plan suggested preparation that extended far beyond the current conflict. You've been planning this since first contact, Zexai realized. Chen's expression remained impassive. High Executor, humanity has been studying galactic civilization for 3 years. We've identified 17 major powers that rely on the subjugation of less advanced species for economic or social purposes. You were simply the first to make the mistake of targeting us directly. The admission hung between them like a weapon waiting to be deployed. Chen was essentially confirming that humanity had been preparing for galactic intervention on a scale that would reshape the fundamental power structures of known space. The species that had appeared to be primitive agricultural colonists were revealing themselves as potential liberators or conquerors on a civilization-ending scale. What about the other 16 powers? Zexai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. That depends entirely on how successfully this negotiation demonstrates that civilized species can resolve their differences through diplomacy rather than force, Chen replied. Humanity prefers peaceful solutions to complex problems, but we also have very strong opinions about slavery, genocide, and the use of sentient beings for entertainment purposes. The negotiation continued for 6 more hours, with Zexai gradually accepting terms that would transform the Zephyrian Empire from a predatory civilization into something resembling a legitimate galactic power. The agreements included immediate cessation of hunting programs, establishment of rehabilitation centers for prey species populations, conversion of military assets to civilian purposes, and acceptance of human observers throughout Empire territory. More significantly, the Empire agreed to provide complete intelligence on other galactic powers that employed similar subjugation tactics, essentially providing humanity with a roadmap for future intervention operations. As the session concluded, HFY made one final attempt to understand the species that had so thoroughly outmaneuvered his civilization. Admiral Chen, may I ask what humanity ultimately hopes to achieve through these reforms? Chen stood and collected his materials, his movements carrying the controlled precision of someone accustomed to command authority. High Executor, we want to live in a galaxy where our children can explore new worlds without worrying about being hunted for sport. We want to establish trade relationships with civilizations that don't view other species as resources to be exploited. And we want to ensure that no other species has to face the choice between extinction and submission. He paused at the chamber's exit and turned back to face the alien commander. Essentially, we want to build a galaxy worthy of the name civilization. Your empire has the opportunity to be part of that future, or you can choose to become a footnote in its history. As Admiral Chen left the negotiation chamber, HFY remained seated, contemplating the complete transformation of everything his species had believed about their place in the galaxy. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, but more than that, they had discovered that true predators didn't just kill their prey. They transformed them into something better.